Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Another very warm welcome to another session of Ask Dr. Saleem. And so, with that, we'll take our first question of the day. This one asks, as per Ghamidi Saab, obligatory body parts of prayers are transmitted by consensus. My neighbor said in Oman, people first omit the first Raf al-Yadayn as well. One can say tawatur of this emission does not reach Prophet, peace be upon him. So how can we be sure leaving rest of Raf al-Yadayn reaches Prophet, peace be upon him?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Simply because from vast majority of the companions and almost all of them, they have done Raful Yadain when you begin the prayer, and this has reached us. And also we must remember that it's not just tawatur. The other instrument of certitude that gives certitude to knowledge, or Islamic sources, the way they are lent knowledge and certitude, is through ijma, which is consensus, and that relates to one's concepts. So just as tawatur exists in deeds and in practice, so ijma or consensus is something that relates to knowledge. And so both in the knowledge that has been transmitted from the Sahaba, we know that this is something that is a part of the essential part of the prayer, in which you have to raise your hands, and also tawatur, in which a very vast majority of the companions do this. So if in Oman or in some other country, there are people who don't do this, then you can easily trace this continuity back to some period of time. So either in a small part of the whole Muslim polity, it could be that people have started a new practice, or it could be that they discontinued it for some reason or the other. So that can be traced. So remember always that we can easily trace back any deviation from the general practice. And I'm sure if you trace back in the history of Oman, you'll find that as well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. They're clarifying that they're asking, how can I be sure that all companions left Raf al-Yadayn before ruku and after ruku?
But as I said, this is the consensus. You'll not find anyone going against this consensus. And if you look at people who are doing this, like for example Oman, they'll let you know the reason why they have done this, or they'll have a different interpretation. So you see, basically it is you who have to come up with a cogent answer as to why people in some countries argue that there is no Raful Yadain. It's not, it's like saying that if the sun is shining, then I cannot see it. So I'll only ask the person to open your eyes and you can see it. You see, such is the nature of ijma and tawatur, that it is pervading the ummah. Anyone who's going to go against it or has a different opinion, that person has to present an argument that supports whatever he or she believes in.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem.
From
Yes, please go ahead.
Dr. Saab, I wanted to clarify what I was trying to ask. I was trying to ask that some people also claim that all the companions used to do the Rafa Yadan before Ruku, and after they raised from the Ruku, they also did Rafa Yadan. So
Right.
they did not leave it, and it was only later that the people started to leave this Rafa Yadan. So the Tawatur doesn't reach the Prophet ﷺ, neither his companions, Radwanullahi ta'ala alayhim ajma'in. Rather later, the people started to leave it, and they quote a narration from Imam Bukhari rahimahullah that he heard from Imam Hassan Basri that all the companions without exception used to do Rafa Yadan. This is their argument. That's what I was trying.
They did the Rafa Yadan at what time? When? In between the prayer, before the prayer, at the end of the prayer. So you see, the time has not been specified. So what we are saying here is that the Raful Yadain at the start of the prayer, in which you raise your hands and you say Allahu Akbar, that is a compulsory part of the prayer. All other instances in which you say Raful Yadain, they are optional. It's not that they are prohibited in any sense. You can always utter them, but they are not mandatory. So the first Raful Yadain, when you begin the prayer, that is mandatory. And remember, any khabar wahid cannot overrule a consensus or a majority opinion, and that too, as I said, from the khabar wahid, unless it is specified that which Raful Yadain are they talking about. Is it the general Raful Yadain? Is it one part of the prayer, or is it all the other Raful Yadain after the opening one? So which one is that?
Thank you.
Dr. Sahib, it was specified in the narration that it was going into ruku and coming.
So that's what I'm saying. That is an optional thing. It was never a compulsory thing. Going into the ruku or getting up from the ruku was never a compulsory thing. That is why some people do it and others don't do it. You see, what we need to understand is that what are the compulsory areas that we have to always observe? So, as far as the posture is concerned, so that is the beginning of the prayer. When you begin the prayer, you say Allahu Akbar and you raise your hand. So, that is the compulsory part. All other instances in which you say Raful Yadain or you utter Allahu Akbar or you do Raful Yadain, like going into the ruku, standing up from the ruku, and then going down again and then getting up. So these are instances in which people do it and they don't do it because it's an option that has been given to us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. If you have another follow-up question, Abdullah Ziad, please raise your hand. The next question asks, what is the sanctity of my life in Islam and to what extent can I go to save my life? Please explain the answer in Urdu.
Well, saving one's life is an obligation that we owe. Otherwise, if we don't save one's life, we would be guilty of killing our own selves or killing someone else. I mean, it is like plain simple murder. And murder is something that has been prohibited. It is one of the major sins which the Quran is enumerated. So, I mean, you have to save your life at all cost. Unless, of course, there is some reason in which you are presenting an example of bravery or maybe saving someone. There are a number of instances. Otherwise, I mean, why exactly would a person give up his life? There has to be some good reason for that. So, if you have a good reason, like for example, you're martyred in a battlefield or you're trying to save any other person's life or maybe trying to destroy the enemy, there could be a number of cases. So, they are the only ways, I mean, they are the only options in which we can sacrifice our lives. Otherwise, I mean, we have to save our lives. Why would we put them in danger?
Could you please answer that in Urdu? Repeat that in Urdu.
Oh. ओके तो देखें आपने जो सवाल किया है उसमें जो असल चीज़ ये है कि आपने पूछा है कि किस हद तक हम जाएं अपनी जान बचाने के लिए। तो आपको हर हद तक जाना चाहिए सवाए इसके कि जान बचाने का मामला वो हो कि जब आप किसी दुश्मन के हमले के नतीजे में आपकी जान चली जाए या किसी की जान बचाने में आपकी जान चली जाए या कोई ऐसा काम आप करें जिसमें कोई कुर्बानी देनी पड़े और आपकी जान चली जाए, वरना जान क्यों दें आप, यानी जान देने की वजह होनी चाहिए ना। तो आपको जान बचानी चाहिए आम हालात में। तो या तो अपने सवाल को आप वाज़े करें, वरना अगर आपके सवाल से जो वाज़े हो रहा है वो ये है कि जान तो किसी कीमत पे नहीं देनी चाहिए जब तक कि कोई वजह ना हो।
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. We'll take one more chat question and then move on to raised hands. This question asks, a person gets a job using unfair means. Later, he realizes that he hasn't done right. How should he compensate? And the fact isn't known that he got the job through unfair means.
The fact is not known to the people, and only that person. Yeah. I mean, this is a question that you have to address your own conscience. Your conscience is the best judge. If you think that you have got it through unfair means and you have actually bypassed people who are more competent, then probably the right way is that you should maybe make this known or maybe just resign, because you don't need to even open up what you've done. You just need to resign, and the other person who's the next in line will automatically be eligible. But then there are exceptions in which, for example, people are vying for jobs and everyone has some support or backing. It could be right or wrong, and jobs are difficult to find. So exceptions are always there. But as I said, if there is some exception, you are the best judge to decide. And if there is no exception, then there is no reason why you should not resign.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Rafia Khwaja, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad. Dr.
Right.
Shehzad, my question is that sometimes the older generation of your relatives have a different way of thinking, and you have certainly learned some new things. So is it right to argue with them, or should just one respect, okay, that's their way? Because recently I heard someone say that she was disgusted with her relatives who were talking about stuff which she didn't believe now. So could you be disgusted with your relatives? Their way of thinking was an older one. You've refreshed your knowledge. Don't you should respect everyone for what their opinion is?
I think the best judge for this is that the audience or the person with whom you intend to discuss something, if that person is someone who is open minded, who is willing to review what he or she already believes and actually believes that arguments decide something. I mean, if you adopt something, it is because the arguments are stronger, and if you leave something, again, it's because the arguments which are stronger. So if a person has this approach, regardless of of age, I think there is no harm in discussing your views. But yes, normally people who have advanced in age, elderly people, they don't tend to accept new opinions, because in the first place they never accepted the first opinion on the basis of arguments. It's basically because what they were told by their parents, or by the society, or by the majority at large. So just pick and choose your audience. If your audience is someone who is willing to listen to the voice of reason, there's no reason that you should not do it. But normally at this age, people are not willing, not even in this age, in every age, the type of education that we get and the grooming that we get is that we normally are not open to discussion and open to argument. So I would just give you this principal answer: that's, look at people who are your audience, and if they are ones who are willing to change or willing to review what they have already in mind, then there's no harm. Otherwise, I mean, you don't need to bring up and argue in every subject.
Dr. Shehzad, like she said that she was disgusted by her uncle telling her father something. And I just thought that you should respect whatever they say. You don't agree, you can say, I don't agree.
Yes, of course. I mean, this is, I mean, as I said, unless the details are known, it's a better attitude would be that you just respect someone's opinion, and you can, I mean, you don't have to agree. If you have a different opinion, you just say the opinion. So instead of, I mean, this is something that we need to learn, that instead of making a comment, it is better that you just present your own opinion on the basis of arguments. If you don't agree with someone, you just say that I don't agree. And yes, at times people do say something and they say that I'm disgusted, or I am really, I don't know why people think like this. So, I mean, either the people who listen should ignore what the younger generation has said, or the younger generation themselves should realize that this is not good manners if you comment in this way. So it all depends on the situation.
She's talking about her father and her uncle, and I just thought,
Right. Yes. Normally, I mean, you don't have to agree with your father or your uncle. You can politely disagree, and at times you see a person is just venting out the frustration or maybe the disagreement in this way when someone says that I'm disgusted. So I think we should not take such comments seriously as well. But if you think that there's a chance to advise the person, yes, advice is always a good thing, but pick and choose the time and the audience that you intend to correct.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad Saleem. I hope
Walaikum
everything is fine. Yeah, I think I briefly discussed with you offline regarding a question. So let me try to summarize my question if possible. This is in reference to an interview I was hearing from Dr. Yasser Qadhi when he was trying to explain some Salafism and post-Salafism. So in one of the questions that he asked, and probably I don't understand, that's why I'm trying to get your help. What he was saying, and this is like it's not that exact translation. What I understood from his answer, that he was saying that the method of isnad that we use in our hadiths, in our theological method, our scholars, is to verify hadith authenticity, is not accepted in historical critical methods, what the modern historian does to authenticate some narrations. So therefore, he was saying that if I am studying in an academic atmosphere where not all the Muslims are there, I cannot present hadith as an authentic saying. But as a believer, I can say it in a Muslim audience. So what I think he's trying to say that the method of isnad to verify hadith, which Muslim scholar does, is not either same or it is in contrast with what they call it historical critical method. So is it like a true statement, or is he missing something, or I am missing something?
Okay, so you see, what has happened is that the majority of the Western scholars who have worked on the science of hadith, he's right about that. They don't accept the science of isnad. But personally, I think there are scholars who, in recent times, who have arisen and they have given a more balanced view. And one of them, one of the very famous ones, I think he just passed away recently, his name is Harold Motsky. So Harold Motsky has a very balanced view regarding hadith literature, and he says that we have to judge every hadith on merit. It could be that it has been either fabricated or wrongly reported, and it could be that it's totally acceptable. So instead of giving a blanket statement that every hadith has been concocted, or so they use a term which is called the common link, which is the person who has spread the narrative. Normally what happens is that a narrative comes down from the Prophet, then a Sahabi, then a Tabai, and then a Taba Tabai, which is a follower of a follower, and then there is a big spread of the isnad. So there's a single strand in the first 3 or 4 sections, and then we have a very, very large proliferation of isnad, and they think that the person from whom that isnad expanded is the one who has fabricated or concocted the narrative. This is something that was put forth earlier on by Goldziher, one of the premier hadith critics in the Western academia, and many others followed suit as well. But I think that Harold Motsky is one person that who's adopted a very balanced approach, and he's very well respected also in hadith circles. So maybe if you have a chance, and I'm sure a person who is as well read as Yasir Qazi, he must be knowing about Harold Motsky, but maybe you can just remind him of him if in case you're in touch with him. And the second important, which is more important, is that you see it's not the isnad that is the final decision, that is the decisive factor in accepting or rejecting a hadith. Yes, to conventional scholars it is, but the way we view, or the way the Farai school views our hadith, we just don't look at the isnad, we also look at the content. So let's suppose that the isnad is correct or incorrect, regardless whether the isnad reaches back authentically to the Prophet or not. We will judge that narrative whether it is in line with the Quran or not, in line with the historical principles, in line with established history, in line with established sunnah, and we will see that even if the isnad is absolutely correct, but if it is against the Quran or established norms of sense and reason, then this is the verdict of all celebrated historic hadith authorities like Khatib Baghdadi and Ram Hurmuruzi and many other scholars who think that if a narrative is soundly ascribed to the Prophet as far as the isnad is concerned, but it goes against the Quran or other established principles, then it shall not be accepted. So I would like you to convey 2 things to him if you are in contact with him, that maybe he should look up Harold Motsky for a more balanced view towards hadith. And secondly, if you would not like to present hadith isnad before Western academia, you don't need to, because isnad is just one way of evaluating a narrative. The thing is that our traditional scholarship has relied heavily on the isnad aspect of authenticity of a narrative, and according to our approach, because the hadith does not give you any new knowledge, it does not give you any independent knowledge, or it's not an independent source of religion, it is always a subservient source of religion. It presents something that is already found in the original sources. So because it is subservient, so therefore if it is subservient in its content also, in its text also, only then will it be accepted. Otherwise a very good, a very glowing isnad, as they say, silsilatul zahab, even that will be not accepted if it goes against established principles.
So just one quick addition. So when you say that we also check the context of the hadith, so is it not the same that what we call darayat rules?
Yes, yes, that is. But you see, what happens is that currently the way these hadith principles have been enumerated is basically something that you can look up. A scholar by the name of Ibn Salah Ram Hurmuruzi, he's a very famous scholar who is very well respected. So he has put forth 6 standards of judging hadith, and these 6 standards are mostly judged on the basis of the isnad, and they seldom have any bearing on the content or the text or the matan of the narrative. So because of the fact that these isnad standards relate to the sanad only, to the chain of narration, and do not have any connection, or I mean if they do, then it's a very, very minor one with the matan or the text of the narrative.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Saleem. Actually, I want to know about as a journal, when we have something in the part of Deen, like Rafal Yadain, we said that you said there's 2 options. Either you can do that or you can't do that. But both we have proven that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did both things. So is it okay that just because it's a sunnah, we know that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did, that sometimes I do Rafal Yadain and sometimes I don't do that? or I should follow only one thing? Number one. About witr also, if you can just explain what is the right way to witr in terms of how to do the rakah, because in Arab countries usually they're doing separately two and then one, and in our Hanafi in Pakistan area we do continuously a 3 rakah. So what is the right way, or both are okay?
So you see, the only that Raful Yudain is a mandatory part of the prayer with which you begin the prayer, which is the one that you begin the prayer. That is compulsory. All the rest are optional, and you can, as you said, it's up to you. At times you can do Raful Yudain, and other times you are not. I mean, you cannot do it. I mean, you would not do it. That's absolutely fine. So things which are optional are left to you.
Okay.
And as far as witr is concerned, both ways are correct. So the Ahlul Hadith or the Hadith scholars, the ones that are generally followed by the Arab countries, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, Imam Ibn Hazm, and some of the other, and Imam Ibn Hanbal also. So as per their interpretation, they offer 2 rakat, and then they offer an extra 1 rakat, which makes the 2 odd, and they call this as witr. And the Hanafis, on the other hand, they pray 3 in one go, and they say salam after the third one. And the Prophet also said this tahajjud prayer in a number of other ways. So at times he would offer 4 continuous rakat, and then he would make them odd by 3, and then he would offer 2 continuous rakats, and again make them odd by a certain number. And at times he would pray till 8 rakat continuously, and then in the 9th rakat he would make it odd by sitting in the 8th rakat and standing up. So the Prophet himself, because the tahajjud prayer was mandatory on him, so he himself, so that it does not become monotony, he would make these variations in the tahajjud prayer. And it is because of these variations we find variations in the ummah as well. So I think both are absolutely fine. Although I do prefer that there is no such thing as one witr. It has arisen because of not understanding a particular hadith of the Prophet, which says awtir bi wahida, which means that you can make an even number of rakat as odd by praying 1 rakat. So basically that doesn't mean that you pray 2 and then pray 1 separately. It actually means that you pray 2 and you pray the third one in the same way, the same notion, without saying salam. So this has arisen because the Hanbalis, normally they interpret this narrative in this way. But as I said, because this has been adopted by their scholars, so this is an option that you have.
But Dr. Saleem, there is one hadith about from Hazrat Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas that he said sometimes you do Isha namaz only 1 rakah of the. So that you said 1 rakah is not.
So no, what is the hadith? What is the narrative? Can you read it out?
After that he said sometimes I do only fard in the Isha and only 1 witr, 1 rakah after the Isha farad.
I don't think this has been accepted by the rest. You see, again, the problem with with our hadith is that you get different opinions from the Sahaba, and because it's an optional prayer in itself. So yes, there is I would say leverage that you can follow either of the Prophet's Sahaba, but as I said, if you have to give preference, then again that preference has to be on the basis of your own interpretation of certain narratives, because people normally, when they pray 2 rakat separately and then they pray one other to make the 2 odd so that it becomes a witr, normally they interpret a narrative in a different way. So it all depends on how you interpret a particular narrative. I just refer to that narrative. The words are awtir bi wahida, which means that you make your even prayer as odd by 1 rakat. So one group of scholars think that this means that you pray 2 rakat and then pray 1 separately. Another group, which I subscribe to, and I think that they are more correct, they say that you pray 2 and you pray 1 within the same rakat. Which means that you don't say salam, but you pray 2 and then you pray 1 more without saying salam. So the first thing is that you have to pray 2, then say salam, and then offer 1 rakat. So it is how they have interpreted a particular narrative of the Prophet that has resulted in this difference of opinion.
मैं आपसे ये पूछना चाह रहा था कि सूरह तौबा चैप्टर 9 की आयत नंबर 122 उसमें जो दो ओपिनियन है, जिसमें जमात को कहा गया कि क्यों ना एक जमात जो है बड़े ग्रोह में से एक जमात निकलती दीन में तबका हासिल करने के लिए। तो ऊपर और नीचे कताल की गुफ्तगू हो रही है इसमें। तो जो अब्दुल्ला यूसुफ अली हैं, पेक्टाल हैं, मोहम्मद असद हैं, ये सब जहाद की तरफ इसको रेफर कर रहे हैं। वो जो जमात है वो निकले और जो रह जाने वाले हैं वो दीन में तबका हासिल करें। जबकि दूसरा ग्रुप जो है, जो कि मौदूदी साहब भी हैं, इस्लाही साहब भी हैं, हैं, वो कह रहे हैं कि नहीं, ये जो है दीन दीन के लिए जो है वो के लिए निकले, छोटी जमात निकलेगी और जो वापस आके फिर अंजार करेगी बाकी लोगों के लिए। तो आप इसको कैसे देखते हैं, क्या है इसमें, कौन सा बेहतर
Do you want to give me your answer in Urdu or in English?
whatever you like, everyone like.
Okay, so you see this verse, if you look at the verse, it tells us ma kana al-mu'minuna liyanfiru kaffa. I mean, it starts off by saying that not every person from amongst the Muslims is required to do whatever is going to be said ahead. Falawla nafara min kulli firqatin minhum taifa. So why did it not happen that a few among them would gain sound knowledge of religion, litafakkahu fid deen wa yunziru qawmahum iza raja'u ilayhim, and then they would be able to reform or warn their ummah, their people once they return to them. So iza raja'u ilayhim is something that has been probably understood, because people think that, because as you said that the previous verses relate to jihad, and iza raja'u ilayhim would actually mean that when they return from that endeavor, they should do whatever has been said in this narrative, in this verse. I think personally, if you look at the verse itself, it is very clear that it is just telling us this responsibility, is communicating to us this responsibility, that a few amongst people of this ummah, they should come forward, gain sound understanding of religion, and then take up the responsibility of warning their own nation. So when it is said, lawla nafara min kulli firqatin minhum taifa, iza raja'u ilayhim actually relates to the fact that when a person should come forward, come to Medina, as that was the center of knowledge at that time, gain sound knowledge there, and then go back to their respective nations to warn them. So there's no question or no possibility or of any jihad being conducted at that time, or singling out people that if they don't go for jihad then they have this responsibility. It is a general responsibility. It's just a general statement given that because of the situation that we are now facing, lots of people have accepted faith, and now that the Prophet is also due to leave this world, and his mission has to continue, and that can only be done if we have scholars who can succeed him. So they must gain sound knowledge in religion, come to Medina for that, gain that knowledge, be experts of their religion and doctors of their religion, and then go back to their tribes and warn them and other people around them. So clearly I would say that does not relate to jihad. It's a responsibility which is being imposed on people in general, and it's like basically it's like inciting and urging people that some of you should come forward and do this. So it's not that everyone should become doctors and specialists. Some of you should do this. So basically it's urging some people who should take up this task and then go back and do the needful.
लेकिन यहाँ पे लफ्ज नफर इस्तेमाल हुआ है। उर्दू में भी हम नफरी जब कहते हैं, इस्तेमाल करते हैं, तो आमतौर पर मिलिट्री के लिए इस्तेमाल करते हैं। वो जमात जो कि इल्म हासिल की जा रही है वहाँ पे।
You see, this is the point of confusion, because people think that nafir aam or nafir is something that is specifically used for jihad. That is something that is just one use of that word. Nafara means a group of people, a number of people, a certain amount of people. And if you look at the next verse, it says liyatafakkahu fid deen. I mean, that number of people, what is the task assigned to it? Not to wage war or not to enter into any militant struggle. It is lawla nafara min kulli firqatin minhum taifa liyatafakkahu fid deen. So from every taifa, which means from every tribe, not the jihadi tribes, but every tribe who is living around Medina, now they have accepted faith. So they should send their representatives or a few people from that tribe to Medina in the form of groups. So it's not that the word nafar is always used for jihad or people who are in small battalions. It is actually used for group of people, regardless of what the mission or the objective of that group is.
Oh, all right. So I had a question related to the inheritance laws in Islam, specifically regarding like its applicability in a family scenario that we're facing. So it's related to my mother, and she basically belonged to a landowning family. And what happened was that her mother died before her grandfather passed away from her mother's side. So what happened was when her grandfather eventually passed away, and that was in 1987 or 88. What happened was that the share that of the land that belonged to her mother was legally and on papers transferred to my mother, right? But what happened was in 2001, and by the way, it stayed like this way for 15, 20 years. And then in 2001, the Federal Shariat Court, it passed a ruling, and it said that like this is like un-Islamic, this can happen. And so her uncles, what they did was, without taking her in loop or without informing her, they went to a person of authority, and they had this like they had like legally on papers, they had the land transferred back to them. So, and they divided it amongst themselves. So what happened was that, and you know how Pakistan is, how things like function here. So we did a follow through. We went to like a person of a senior, more authority, and he overturned the decision. But the thing is that we actually couldn't implement it. But it's like after 10 or 15 years now, we have planned to like really follow this through and get done with it and implement it fully. But the thing is that we're really not sure. So was the decision by the Federal Shariat Court, was that right? And if we do pursue it and we get that land back, would that be like morally wrong of us? Like, does Islam allow my mother to inherit that land if her mother had passed away before her grandfather? So that's basically our confusion.
So, first of all, we have to understand that this issue has not been covered by the Sharia originally. So, what has happened is that people have done various, they have formed various opinions and ijtihad, as you can call them. So, some of the scholars say that if someone dies in your own life and that person has children, then majority opinion is that the children don't inherit, and that is a classical case of the orphaned grandchild. So there's another group of scholars, and I agree with them, which says that when the mother dies in the presence of the father and the mother also has children, as is the case, as is your case, in that case the share of the mother goes to the daughter or to whoever children are living. So this is the stance that I'd like you to understand, because as I said, there is no clear opinion. So there's bound to be a difference of opinion. So because there is no explicit ruling on the inheritance of the grandchild. So, but in your case, as you have said, that this happened in 1987, and until that time, what was the law? Was it that she could inherit? And what was the law of the land? So that's what I'm saying. So whatever change took place was in 2001. So they had no right to change, because if something had happened after 2001, then maybe they could have gone to the court and done whatever they have done. But in the sense that you are telling us the details, that all this happened in the time when it was legally allowed and they had no right to change it. So from 1987 to 2001, the legal ruling was that an orphaned grandchild would get the inheritance of the deceased mother. And if that is the case, I think that this is something that your uncles should not have done. They have crossed their authority. They have crossed their limits, I would say. They have done something that was, retroactive, something that could not be retroactively applied. Things can only be done for future. So the 2001 ruling is only valid for 2001 and beyond 2001. But your case rests in a time which is before that. So I think that if a plea is taken by a legally appointed lawyer, you can ask your lawyer that because of the fact that this case has been time barred, and the time that it was actually thought to have been taken place is something in which the uncles did something when the law had not been, the law had changed by that time, but previously it was not there. So I think this is a case in that you can take up at legal forums. But the other thing that I'd like to remind you is that, you see, to have an opinion as the one I have given you is one thing, and to follow the law of the land is another thing. So yes, at times my own opinion would be different from the law of the land. So in that case, I need to follow the law of the land, whatever that law of the land is. So today, if this happens, I would probably do what your uncles did. But at the time when you when your grandfather died or your mother's grandfather died. This was not the case. So I think a plea can be taken in favor of this, because the time when this actually happened was the time when it was legally allowed.
Right, sir. And sir, this was actually what the person who overturned the decision said, that this like specific ruling could not be applied retrospectively, because then we would have to like go back to all the way back to when Pakistan was like
Correct.
in conception,
Right.
and then change all
Right.
the
Thank you very
Yes,
land
much.
records.
I agree with
But
them.
sir,
Yes.
but my contention was that even though we're legally in the right, like the majority of our jurisprudence says that it's not Islamically allowed. So that's where we feel like are we morally
No, so you see, in that case, just no. So you see, in that case, you're not doing anything on your own. You're just following the law of the land. Whether that law of the land is something that follows the majority or the minority should not be your concern. It is the law of the land. So if there is something wrong with that, then the law of the land, I mean, the state forums have to decide for that. If something has become the law, regardless of the majority opinion, you are bound by that actually.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem.
Got it, sir. Thank you so
On to
much.
a couple of chat questions and then come back to the raised hands. I'll read these out a bit quickly. This is a hadith narrated by Safiha that the Messenger of Allah said, "The caliphate after me will last for 30 years, then there will be kingship." This hadith is recorded in Sunan al-Tirmidhi and Sunan Abi Dawud. The 30-year period usually refers to the caliphates of the four caliphs: Abu Bakr, which had 2 years, Umar, 10 years, Uthman, 12 years, Ali, 6 years. These caliphates are considered the golden age of Islam. Do you think Ali's caliphate was really a golden age of Islam? We see Ali's caliphate full of conflicts and wars leading to sizable human casualties and divisions amongst the Muslims.
So see, I mean, even if there were casualties, even if there were deaths, or even if things happened that should not have happened, I would still say that the first four caliphs, they constitute the rightly guided caliphate. In fact, the Khilafatul Rashida, as the title goes, it's a title that has been given by a vast majority of our scholars, precisely for the reason that this was the golden age. And yes, by the time Ali had ascended the throne, there was a significant downfall, and it started with his times. But I would still count him amongst the righteous caliphs. And there were certain errors and omissions that took place in his reign, which caused a lot of bloodshed. And later on, the transfer of power that took place also had a number of questions that have still not been fully, probably satisfactorily answered. But yes, but this happens. I mean, it doesn't take away anything from his caliphate. So I would still count it amongst the rightly guided caliphate.
Thank you very much. The next question asks, the Quran refers to a group described as the chosen people, and this term is also often mentioned in today's global discussions. What does the Quran actually mean by the chosen people, and why were they chosen in the first place?
You see, this is a big misconception. The word chosen, actually, wherever it is used in the Quran, it is used for the progeny of Abraham, which means that until Abraham, the scheme of the Almighty would be that He would select individuals and send them to various settlements and cities as prophets of God. And they would be assigned with this mission of delivering God's message. But in the time of Abraham, when Abraham arrived on the scene, the Almighty took a decision, and that was that He said that if his progeny would adhere to a certain protocol, which is that they would be just and they would adopt righteousness as a trait in their collective life, then the Almighty will give them the ascendancy, so to speak, amongst other comity of nations. They'll rise and they'll rule over other comity of nations, other nations, so to speak. So this is something that was a promise made by God to the progeny of Abraham. And of course, this included the Jews, it included Muslims, it included all those people who were born from Abraham, the Semitic race to be precise. And because of the fact that the Torah speaks of this promise as well, and for them this promise is something that is spoken of for the Jews, because it was for the Jews or the descendants of Prophet Isaac and Prophet Jacob who took the first turn in being given this responsibility, that this misconception arose that perhaps the Jews are the chosen people only, and they have been maybe chosen as a select group, maybe they have a special status and they'll be salvaged in the hereafter. Again, this is a misconception. So basically, what we need to understand is that the progeny of Abraham as a whole was chosen, which included the Ishmaelites and the Israelites. So they were chosen one by one, given this responsibility that instead of a single prophet going to a nation, there will be a series of prophets coming amongst the Israelites. They'll be assigned with the responsibility of becoming truth oriented and righteous oriented in their own structure, and convey the religion of God to other nations of the world. So they were chosen for this task of delivering the truth to other people of the world. So it should not be of any confusion that chosen means that they have a special status in the eyes of the Almighty, as if they are superior. It only means that the Banu Abraham, or these children of Abraham, have been chosen as a group of individuals who have been assigned that instead of one prophet being chosen and sent to different parts of the world, to different nations, a whole progeny, a whole generation, or a whole series of group of people were chosen, and they were given the responsibility of delivering the religion of God to other people of the world. So this choice or this selection is not of any superiority. It's like a responsibility given to them to impart the religion of God to other people of the world.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Now, Shad Shafkat, please go ahead, and a reminder to all the participants, please limit yourself to one question.
Yes, Islam, my very short questions. Number one, hadith would refer to a tradition which traces back right to the Prophet. Those which stop at some of the Sahaba or the later people should not be is not to be classified as hadith. And the other question follow up is that those hadiths which are mentioned even in Bukhari and Muslim, and they have a sound chain of narrative, but if they do not follow logic and reasoning, we can disregard them.
Right. So you see, the word hadith has been at times extendedly used for asar also, which means that the content which the Sahaba have produced as guiding people, as giving them some knowledge about the Prophet of God. So even if it is not from the Prophet, classically or technically it should be called the asar of a Sahabi. But I mean, as a loose connotation, I would say, or as an extended connotation, at times what the Sahaba have also said is generally regarded to be a hadith, although technically we know it's not a hadith. It's just a extended use of the term. And yes, you're right that if it is, I mean, something that is technically correct and it is against established principles, including the Quran, including established history, it should not be accepted, even if the isnad is absolutely fault-free.
Thank you very much. We'll move on. Akram Batisa, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mariam.
Thank you.
Sir, I have a question about single rakah, but not with bitar. Say, if, for example, I'm trying to perform asr, and by mistake, after 3 rakat, I finish the namaz. So can I go back and say 1 rakat to complete that 4 rakat or no?
So the issue I have understood as is that you have actually prayed 3 rakat, you have done your salam, and then later on you have realized that 1 rakat was missing. So yes, you can just pray that 1 rakat individually and then say salam again.
And say, and with the sajda sahu, right?
And of course, that is part of it.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Baran Nashur, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Sir, my question is about the time of the Prophet, where there was, of course, slavery, and slavery was abolished, but there were still prisoners of war, which were including women. And Allah says in Surah Nisa, ayah 24, that you can marry these women even if they are married themselves. And also, Allah says in Surah Mu'minun, those who guard their private parts, except from their wives and those whom their right hand possesses. So my question is, does this mean that sexual intercourse with their slaves, women, or prisoners of war was allowed?
So this is a very extensive subject, and I think I'll ask Mariam to give you some detailed links about it. So a short answer might not suffice, but very briefly, you see, slavery was an institution, an absolutely inhuman institution that was inherited by religion, by Islam at that time, and the Quran wanted to do away with it, but because of the fact that it was part and parcel of the society to such an extent that it could not have been rooted out by just a single order of prohibition, so it was gradually, it gradually took its place, and it was gradually totally abolished. But during that time period in which it was being abolished, of course, it was something that was allowed. And as far as the prisoners of war are concerned, remember that from the very start, the very first battle, which was the Battle of Badr, there are verses of the Quran that were revealed, and and the Muslims were told that they cannot enslave any prisoner of war. Any further slavery is not possible, and you cannot enslave any prisoner of war and have intimate relations with that prisoner, in the sense that if you capture some woman. But before that could even happen, we know that there were scores and scores of slaves that were already in various houses. So what happened was that new slaves, the door to make new slaves was absolutely closed, because people were not allowed to enslave prisoners of war. So the only slaves that remained with people were the ones who were pre-existing before this order. And for them, a gradual process of elimination, a process of prohibition was given. But during this time, until it took its final shape, yes, it was allowed. But remember, this was something specific to that era only, and it's not something that is no longer in operation, even if a war breaks out today.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Okay, wait. I want ask a quick additional question. Because it's a very touchy subject, and I have a friend who actually left Islam because of this. But because he said, wouldn't this be considered rape of a woman?
Yeah,
who
I mean,
cannot say no?
you see, this is something, it's no longer allowed. Remember, this was something that was a very specific circumstance of those times. And in order to gradually do away with this whole scenario in which women were subjected to actually prostitution. So the reason that it was not, just prohibited in a single go was that these women, they were of loose character. If they had been liberated at once, they would have just gone into the society, and they would have opened up prostitution dens, and they would have caused havoc in the society. And men, basically, they were not trained to work, and they would have become an economic burden on the society. So a gradual process of elimination was adopted. So maybe your friend is absolutely right in the sense that he did not feel this to be the right thing that should have happened. But the thing is that it is not allowed anymore. It was only allowed for a particular period of time in which the gradual order of prohibition was being implemented.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Farhan, please check the chat. I sent you a link to one of the articles by Dr. Saleem that goes into this in depth.
Thank
Amin,
you.
please go ahead. Amin.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So, because somebody asked about the law of inheritance, so my question is more about the ethical repercussions of these unjust interpretations of inheritance law. So I'll try to be just brief. I followed the law of the land in Pakistan when my husband passed away in an accident, and I don't have a son. And so when I tried to transfer my property, the sisters, they demanded their share. They said that because you don't have a son, then we also get the share. And in his will in Canada, he just left everything for me and my daughters. So now I gave them their shares. And now the problem is that my daughters, they don't want to keep any relations with their aunt. So I just want to know who is, wrong. Are my daughters wrong? Should we, try to mend relations, or I'm so confused about this.
I mean, you see, whatever the outcome, whatever you did, regardless of that, I think relations should not be broken, especially if they are blood relations. There could be a difference of opinion, there could even be a fight, a bad argument, we could have bad taste, all these things happen in families. So regardless of whatever happens, I think you should advise your daughters that because their aunts are their blood relations, they should not sever their relations. I mean, they need not be very warm, but they should not break off those relations. But as far as the law itself is concerned, because there are two conflicting interpretations, so according to one interpretation, your sisters were right if they demanded that part of the property which should be given to them. This is one interpretation they might be following, and hence this is something that your daughters would not have liked at that time. And of course, there's another interpretation according to which whatever has happened correctly, and you were not obligated to pay any part of the property that your husband left behind to your sisters. But as I said, that again is something because of the fact that people who hold this opinion are in the minority. So it all depends that how you view these things. And all said and done, I would advise this once again, that whatever has happened, let bygones be bygones, and relations should not suffer.
I understand all these things. The thing is that, at the time when it was such a traumatic thing, they were expecting some support and compassion from their aunts,
Right.
and this happened. I don't know. I want to support my daughters, but I also feel they are right. But I have relations with my sister-in-law. They are not talking to me either because they think, because they said it's against their ego now that the daughter said this. But I cannot force my daughters to, mend the
Of course.
relationship.
Right.
They,
Right.
they think like it was extremely selfish based because they have sons, they have husbands who are, yeah, they are perfectly fine in their houses, and we used to give them very generously. It's not something new. We have been at the giving end. It was not
Yeah.
something unusual for me. But for my daughters, I cannot push them, but I still feel kind of guilt that
Right.
maybe I should. I don't know.
As I said, I mean, you're at the right place. You just need to advise your daughters regarding whatever you have in mind. You cannot force them, and they have their own opinion to make. But I mean, as I said, unless more details are known, maybe it was not the right time that they chose to assert their right. It was they should have waited for some. Yeah. Yeah. So yes, that is very important. They should have been more empathetic and sympathetic, because at that time they needed emotional support, and these things can easily be sorted out at a later instance. So whatever happened, I'm sorry for that. It happened. It should not have happened in this way. But the thing is that now that it has happened, now if you see, we have to try to see in retrospect that even if something has taken place in a wrong way, what best we can do. And personally, I think you're answerable for your own self. I think what you need to do is you do yourself, and all that you can do is advise your daughters and let them choose whatever path they would like to follow. You don't need to feel guilty about it, I would say.
That's what I think, because I read that I first applied to me that when the snake bites you, you don't go to the snake and ask them why did it
Right.
bite you. You just
Why did
focus
it?
on your own healing. So I feel
Yes.
if somebody has done wrong to you, you don't go, and because there is of course this element of self-respect also, because as women
Correct.
we are told always to forgive, be magnanimous and all those things. But there
Yes.
are
Yes.
things when we have to choose self-respect over.
Okay. I mean, again, I think you should trust your gut feeling. Just trust your conscience, and as far as possible, be kind and don't try to hurt anything anyone intentionally, and which I believe you would never do. But these are very, very sensitive and very subtle things, and it's difficult to give any external advice. I think you should just trust your own personal conscience and your gut feeling.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I just wanted to see it objectively because in the situation you cannot, and I just
Right.
want to ask somebody
It
how others
happens.
see it. Are my daughters wrong or my sister-in-law's wrong? I don't know. Yes.
Thank you,
Okay.
Amna.
Okay,
We'll
thank you.
move on with the questions because we're very short on time. Abdul Rauf, please go ahead, and please try to be concise.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
वालेकुम सलाम।
डॉक्टर साहब, मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि कई जगह पे ऐसे वाक़यात हैं, मैं उसकी एग्जांपल दे सकता हूँ कि एक बुरी सिचुएशन को अल्लाह ताला यानी उस वाक़े को एज इज़ पेश फरमाते हैं और फिर उसको दूर होने को अपनी तरफ से बताते हैं। उसकी एक ग्लेयरिंग एग्जांपल सूरह दुहा में है कि अलम यजिद का रदा अलम
यतीमन फआवा।
आवा अलम यजिद का यतीमन फआवा और लालन फहदा। मतलब ये सारी सिचुएशन जो पहली सिचुएशन थी वो कहाँ से थी? मतलब इट वाज नॉट फ्रॉम गॉड, और जो पॉजिटिव सिचुएशन है वो अल्लाह ताला अपनी तरफ से होने को बताते हैं।
नहीं, ये तो देखें, ये तो ऐसे ही है कि जैसे इंसान रास्ता तलाश कर रहा होता है, تو اس راستہ تلاش کرنے کے نتیجے میں جب اس کو راستہ مل جاتا ہے تو ہم یہ کہتے ہیں کہ اللہ تعالیٰ نے ہماری مدد کی، اللہ تعالیٰ نے ہمارے جو مشکل حالات کو ہمارے سے دور کیا. تو یہ اصل میں ایک معاملہ ہوتا ہے کس چیز کا کہ آپ مشکل حالات بھی آپ پہ جو طاری کیے جاتے ہیں وہ خدا ہی کی طرف سے بعض دفعہ ہوتے ہیں، یہ آزمانے کے لیے کہ آپ سچ کی تلاش میں کتنے سچے ہیں، اور جس چیز میں آپ کو مبتلا کیا گیا ہے اس کو پا کے بھی آپ صبر کرتے ہیں، شکر کرتے ہیں یا نہیں. تو وہ ایک الگ سے آزمائش ہے. اس آزمائش میں اگر آپ پابرجا رہیں گے، اس آزمائش میں اگر آپ پورے اتریں گے تو اس کا انعام آپ کو یہ مل سکتا ہے کہ آپ کو جو جس چیز کی آپ تلاش پہ نکلے ہیں وہ آپ کو مل جائے، اور یہ بھی ہو سکتا ہے کہ نہ ملے. پیغمبر کے معاملے میں تو ایک ذرا مختلف چیز ہے، ورنہ یہ ایسا نہیں ہے کہ جو پچھلی جو چیزیں آپ کہہ رہے ہیں کہ وہ اللہ تعالیٰ ہی کی طرف سے ہیں. یعنی آپ سمجھ لیں کہ اللہ تعالیٰ نے تو ہمیں آزمائش کے ایک ابدی قانون میں سب کو ڈالا ہوا ہے، پیغمبروں کو بھی ڈالا ہوا ہے، انسانوں کو بھی ڈالا ہوا ہے. اس آزمائش میں مختلف حالتیں ہیں. ان حالتوں میں یہ ہے کہ آپ سچائی کی تلاش میں نکل کھڑے ہوئے ہیں. اس سچائی کی تلاش میں آپ کا رویہ ہے جو زیر بحث ہے آزمائش کے طور پہ، اور اسی بارے میں بعض دفعہ کسی کو تسلی دینی ہوتی ہے تو ہم یہ کہہ دیتے ہیں کہ دیکھو تم اتنے پریشان ہو تو ماضی میں تمہیں یاد نہیں ہے کہ تمہاری جو پریشانی تھی تو اس طرح اور اس طرح فلاں نے تمہاری مدد کی تھی اور فلاں نے تمہاری مدد کی تھی. تو یہ ایک تسلی کے لیے ہم بھی کہہ لیتے ہیں اپنے جاننے والوں کو. تو اسی اصول پہ اللہ تعالیٰ نے نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کو مخاطب کر کے یہ کہا کہ آپ کو پریشان ہونے کی ضرورت نہیں ہے. اگر آپ کو مشکلات پیش آ رہی ہیں تو ذرا دیکھیے، اپنی زندگی پہ نگاہ دوڑائیے، آپ ماضی میں اپنے آپ کو دیکھیے تو کہاں کہاں مشکلات تھیں اور اللہ تعالیٰ نے آپ کی دستگیری کی. تو یہ تو صرف یاد کرانے کے لیے ہیں کیونکہ ہم سب لوگ انسان ہیں نا، تو انسان ہونے کے ناطے ہمیں بعض دفعہ مایوسی ہو جاتی ہے. تو اس مایوسی سے نکلنے کے لیے بعض دفعہ ماضی کی طرف دھیان دینا پڑتا ہے.
مطلب یہ بات امپورٹنٹ نہیں ہے کہ اللہ تعالیٰ یہ کہتے ہیں کہ یہ ایک سچویشن تھی جس کو میں نے بدلا، وہ تھی بھی تو اللہ کی طرف سے نا. تو یہ اللہ
نہیں، وہ تھی بھی کس لیے کہ وہ اللہ تعالیٰ نے اس کو بھی آزمائش کے طور پہ رکھا تھا نا کہ آپ اس میں کیا رویہ اختیار کرتے ہیں. تو اللہ تعالیٰ آپ کو یہ بتا رہے ہیں کہ دیکھیں جو میں نے آپ کی سابقہ آزمائش کی تھی آپ اس پہ پورا اترے، اور چونکہ آپ پورا اترے تو دیکھیے میں نے آپ کو اس موقع پہ ٹھکانہ بھی دیا اگرچہ آپ یتیم تھے. تو پہلے ہو یا بعد ہو وہ دونوں اصل میں آزمائش کی شکلیں ہیں، اور یہ زیر بحث ہے کہ آپ کا رویہ دونوں میں کیا ہو. تو یہ تو ایک تسلی کا جملہ ہے جو اس موقع پہ کہا گیا.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Last question that we can take for the day before we have to end the session. Abdullah Ziad, please go ahead and please try to be concise.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Sahab. I'm sorry, I have to clarify the confusion. I asked the first question. So it is sometimes argued that like the Ibadis left the first Rafa Yadan later on, and it cannot be traced to any of the companions of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Similarly, the Hanafis left it later on, and it cannot be traced to the companions because there is no authentic report of any companion praying without Rafa Yadan. So how can we answer this?
So as I said, you see, you need to differentiate between the types of Raful Yadan. So Raful Yadan means to raise your hands whenever you say Allahu Akbar. Raf means to raise, and Yadan means your both hands. So this is something that signifies whenever you say Allahu Akbar, God is great. So whenever the word God is great occurs in the prayer, you say, you raise your hands. So as far as the consensus and the tawatur is concerned, the Raful Yadan which has this consensus of tawatur is the one with which you begin the prayer. I mean, this has a consensus in the vast majority of the Sahaba. I mean, not only the vast majority, almost all of them did this. So regarding the rest of the Raful Yadan, when you go into the ruku, when you rise from the ruku, when you go into your sajda, etc., about them there is a debate whether it should be done or not. So about them it is said that this is an optional thing. You can do it or you cannot do it. But as far as the one that when you start the prayer is concerned, that is a compulsory thing. So you see, the debate is not about the rest of the prayer. I mean, yes, there is, but in the sense that whether it's optional or not. It is optional for the rest of the prayer, but for the start of the prayer, it is mandatory.
So, sir, just quickly, how can I be sure that
yes, that was I'm answering. The fact that the opening Raful Yadan is...
Can I clarify?
Okay.
Yeah. So how can I be sure that because it is claimed all of the Sahaba had a consensus that they did Rafa Yadan when going to Ruku and rising from Ruku as well. And the reason they provide for this is that it has been authentically reported, and there is no authentic narration that any of the Sahabi left Rafa Yadan while going into Ruku and coming up from the Ruku.
You see, again, you have to understand that these reports or narrations, they are sporadic, fragmentary reports of what Prophet did. Many of the things have been transmitted, a number of things have not been transmitted, many of them have been left to the interpreters to transfer them. So it is not on the basis of a narration that we decide what the Prophet did. That is a very weak basis, because it's just a small number of people, one person transferring the information to another person, and so on and so forth. This does not in any way give certitude to any religious practice. The religious practice that receives certitude is through when a vast majority of people do it by their practice, by their consensus. And as far as practice and consensus is concerned, this is what is important. I mean, when you refer to a khabar wahid or a hadith, that is not sufficient for you to establish something either in favor of it or against it. All that it does is gives us a piece of information, and that piece of information can never qualify as being certain or giving a directive which is independent of the Quran or Sunnah and makes it compulsory on people. To be compulsory, it has to be transmitted through tawatur and through ijma, which is consensus. And if you find that this is, I mean, because you see at times you need to explain more, you can take my number from Mariam, and if you need more details, you can get in touch with me personally so that we can have a little more discussion on this.
And with that, we're at the end of the time for this session. Thank you all so much for coming through and asking questions.